I want to start with AJ Dybansta because I have like a million thoughts on Dybansta. I've already taken like 1,000 words of notes in my like scouting notes thing on him, just because I find him so interesting based off of what we saw at U19s, kind of based off of his last year at Utah Prep, and based off the fact that he's going to BYU, which I think the more that I've thought about it is kind of an amazing fit for him based off of the fact that he's going to play for Kevin Young, really high level NBA style coach who has a really modern offensive scheme, and B, will have multiple guys in the backcourt in Rob Wright, Richie Saunders, who will be able to kind of take some of the load from him in a way that I'm actually starting to think he might need based off of the U19s and based off of some of what we saw this year at Utah Prep. So Dybansta, I just kind of want to give a quick little outline here before I kind of let you give some thoughts. So Dybansta averaged 14 points, 4 rebounds, 2.3 assists, shot 50% from the field, 11% from three, 84% from the line, won MVP of the tournament. I don't know how you feel about that. I thought it was kind of laughable that he won it over Mikel Brown. I thought Brown was the best player for Team USA. I've tweeted that already, gotten some feedback on it. So, that's the reality of the job here. But I am simultaneously like very heartened with some of the things I saw. And also I think that his play raised some real questions to me, to where I'll just kind of spoil the, ending here. I have him like pretty clearly third right now in this class in 2026. And I think he definitely has the potential and ability to rise into that number one spot. I think it's very clearly, a real group there at the top, but I do have him third entering the year. So I'll kind of ask you, for having watched him, you got to see him at camp, you got to see him throughout the year, even a little bit more than I did. Where are you at on Dybansta as you kind of go through this?
So just for context, I started watching AJ in live in the fall of his 8th grade year. Now he ended up, kind of reclassing. So I guess you could call it his 9th grade year. But because he was a Brockton kid, they like that to be clear, not a Boston kid, but essentially a Boston. And he played at St. Sebastian. So I remember, I've seen him live a ton. And I was in Colorado for the first 3 days of the training camp. And then I watched the games in Switzerland. What I will say is that I didn't see anything that I thought was an outlier relative to what I had seen during the course of his senior year. And I had been pretty critical of him in his senior year because candidly, I thought that he had stagnated a little bit. I do think he's the most naturally talented prospect in the class, with his wing size, his athleticism, the court coverage, some of the ways that he can, rise up and get his own shot, and so many different things that have been really well documented at this point, right? But I did not see him make a leap in his senior season. And more specifically, I thought that what was most concerning, and I was candid with him about this, and we communicated to his dad when we were going to take him off that number one line in the last ranking. I felt like it had become more of a show to him than a competition. Like when he went out, and I saw him live at Utah Prep, I think 5 times, and then obviously like all the postseason stuff. But he was very frequently playing for the camera and dramatically reacting to try and draw officials' fouls, and it was not a I'm going to go get this right now. I'm going to show I never saw that of like, let me prove it to you right now. And down the stretch in Switzerland, especially in that game versus Canada, which turned out to be the closest test that USA ever had. Like if you were to go back and say like, oh, he scored here, he scored there, you'd say, oh, he responded. But the way in which he scored was really concerning. And it was that same kind of try and bait the officials and flail and all that. So what concerned me is that he did not make a jump this year. Darren Peterson 100% made a jump.
Yes.
And Cam Boozer is the most linear guy in the world. He just, at the same rate, he just keeps getting better all the time. And to your previous point about having Dybansta number 3, I finished with him at number 2. But I was pretty adamant. Like, a lot of people talked about the Dybansta Peterson battle as if it was a 2-player race for number 1. And I was pretty adamant that I thought it was a 3-player race. So I finished with Boozer at 3. We went Peterson, Dybansta, Boozer. And as I said, there was nothing. I didn't have any buyer's remorse from what I saw live in Colorado or what I watched in person in Switzerland to make me say, gee, we should have had, I wish I kept him at 1. Where I did have some buyer's remorse was having Mikkel Brown at 6 and not a little higher, but I'm sure we'll get into that as we go.
So let's kind of go with what I liked about Dybansta here very early, even against U19. And I really like watching guys at the World Cup level, U19, because it really gives you a sense of how capable they are as ball handlers, because you're going against a set defense in an exceptionally competitive environment, in a situation where you're facing schemes that you may not have really faced before, against European teams, against kind of different environmental factors that you just haven't seen before, right? And a lot of these teams are like really heavily practicing and kind of maybe setting up scouting wise ahead of time to beat you. And, all due respect to the high school level, it's just a little bit different, right? There are high school games certainly where that is the case. I was just telling you, I was watching from April the Chipotle Nationals game with Luhai and Prolific, where it was really fun to watch just how Luhai tried to load up against Darren Peterson and use Dylan Mingo on him and tried to make things really difficult for him to actually get any sort of penetration into the paint. But I think that the U19 level is just a little bit different. So let's start with what I liked about Dybansta.
Okay.
So I agree with you athletically that he has the highest ceiling. I don't really think there's any question otherwise. He is this great blend of powerful athleticism. He's explosive. He's strong. He's very physical. He's willing to play into contact, but he also plays with great bend and great flexibility.
Yeah.
Which is what I really like. He consists, I talk about pad level all the time on this show. He gets his pads lower. He gets his hip level lower than his man all the time, despite being, 6'8", 6'7.5", without shoes, whatever he's going to measure at. He's a big dude that is able to get low. And that's why he's able to get into the lane consistently and draw fouls in the way that he's capable of doing. That stuff shows up on the defensive end as well. I thought he was incredibly switchable at the U19s defensively. I don't love the way he gets through screens right now, but I think that BYU will do a good job of kind of teaching that and helping him to improve that skill set over the course of his time there this year. Again, NBA style coaching, I think, will really help him in this regard. I thought that his low man coverage defensively was really impressive. I thought that he could fall asleep a bit off the ball. I thought that some of the advanced court mapping stuff, just in terms of rotations and scrambles, was a little bit off, and we'll see where that grows this year. Again, I would imagine that, shell drills, rotational drills, things like that, he'll really be able to kind of grow and mature this year at BYU. The thing that worries me pretty substantially is the handle mixed with the shot. I don't think he has a good handle right now. Okay. I would just flat out say that. I think that he is very good in a straight line and using the ability to gather and use his physical tools on his gathers to be able to get to the line and get to the rim. I like his footwork with his Euro steps and gathers and things like that. I don't think he has a tight handle. I don't think that he really showcases the ability to crossover, get guys off balance, play at any sort of rhythm or tempo in order to kind of open up an angle for himself in those moments. I also really worry about the shot. The shot is so flat. And that is something that does not translate as you move up levels and start to move back in terms of the 3-point line. Just physics wise, right? If you shoot a flatter shot, your area that the ball has to go in the rim, you just have like zero margin for error. If you shoot a flatter shot, just mechanically, what I see is, he shoots it from way out in front of his face, and then everything momentum wise is going forward. For him, everything seems to be going like all the way toward the rim in a way that results in the ball going flat as opposed to upward whenever, you see somebody like Michael Brown shoot the ball, for instance, a guy that we'll talk about here momentarily. So I like the tools. I like what I see in like myriad ways. I just worry that the two things that I'm most concerned about are the things that, the shooting could really like give him a lower floor than what we want him to have, right? He has good touch. Like I think he will be able to develop as a shooter, which is why I still have him quite high. The handle though is something where I'm like a little bit worried about, I guess is what I would say. So
I have a philosophical point. Let me start with this. Yeah. The shooting, I think, has regressed a bit. I think specifically the level of loft on his ball has gotten less in the last year. I thought he shot with better loft a year ago than he does right now, and that is particularly evident at the free throw line. You are a little higher on his physicality than I am. I don't think he plays through contact as well as he could or should, because I think he's always flailing and trying to do the draw foul thing and not leaving himself with any.
I don't disagree with that for what it's worth, Adam. Like he does a lot of that, and he's really good at exaggerating contact.
So, but like doing it in a way in which if he doesn't have the call, if he doesn't get the call, he's got no recourse because, then it's a travel, so that's my. He doesn't just play through contact and regardless of the call, like someone who's, on with Stephen A. Smith comparing himself to LeBron James should. So the other thing I would say about the handle, and this is, I'm going to pose it more as a question. Sure. What do you think of his hands just in general? And the reason I ask is because I tend to think that if you have good hands, you can develop the handle. And if you have good touch and your mechanics aren't glaringly broken, you can develop the shooting. Those aren't hard and fast rules. Those are generalizations. But more often than not, I think philosophically, those tend to like steer me in the right direction. I think his hands are fine. So yeah, while I agree, and the other thing I would say, because I've talked a lot over the years about his rim pressure. I thought that is actually, that's one part of his game which I think has gotten a little bit better. And the thing that I would say that I like about him, he doesn't have to do quite as much with the advantage creation because he's so long with his strides. So he's got like that economy of motion going through the lane, where if he's just got a little bit of an angle and he strides out and he learns to go through the contact, that's where it all comes together for me. So I don't disagree with you about the handle. I'm just not quite as worried about it because I think he's got the hands where it can, you made the point about how low he can play to the ground. I've made the point about how long he can play. I tend to refer to like his elasticity for his size, his ability to kind of bend and move in different ways. Those are all things that I think of along this line of discussion. So I'm curious what you thought of the hands and that kind of second step about like me saying, okay, if he's got good hands, I think the handle will come in time.
Well, and to just, bring the point back in terms of the stride length mixed with the ability to bend, that intersection is something that I think often leads to significant upside. The ability to get lower, get leverage than your player, than your opposing player, and then stride out to be able to get all the way to the rim. That is something that is like genuinely special. And it's why, like, I think he does have a very significant chance to go number one at the end of the day. Like, I'm not disputing that by any stretch of the imagination. In terms of the hands, and I agree with you, his hands are totally fine. philosophically, it is interesting. I've never heard it phrased that way, so I'm like trying to like gather my brain thoughts in my head.
You can just be like, no, Fink, you're freaking wrong. It's your show. You can just tell me.
Well, no, I'm like actually trying to like genuinely consider it. So I guess that what worries me is that he's been like an okay, like I'm trying to think of like the other indicators that would bring like his hands. Like I think he catches well. I think that he has no problem. Like I'm like really trying to like think through this a little bit now. So philosophically off the top of my head, I would say that like handle and the ability to improve handle, there's probably a little bit more to it than just hands. Like it's elasticity in terms of hip flexibility, in terms of stride length, in terms of different things, in terms of like the thing that's different with him than like Ace Bailey to me, right, is that bend. Like Ace's handle, people loved Ace's handle coming into the year, right? Thought, oh my God, he's so good at getting to all these step backs and he's so good at finding these spots. And it's just like, well, he never gets to the rim, right? The difference is AJ gets to the rim. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that is, he gets the easy shots. Everything that Ace does is very difficult. Everything that AJ does is theoretically like the easiest shots on the court, right? The shots at the rim. I would need to think about it more in terms of, do hands work as a tool that you can use to showcase like improvement in terms of getting better with your handle? I would really have to think about that. That's an interesting thing, and you have now like ruined the rest of my day because I'm going to be considering this now like the rest of the way.
It's very rare that I can geek out basketball wise with someone. I just want you to know I greatly appreciate it.
I love it. So look, like I'm in on AJ, like for sure. I think his gathers are like genuinely tremendous. I think the handle is like quite high. I will have some breakdowns coming on Dybansta's games at U19s at a certain point. I have not announced kind of the project we're doing here, but I will get to that at a certain point. There will be some breakdowns. You'll be able to see where I break down these games like fully in depth.
If it's not too intrusive,
please.
I think it's fascinating the way I've never seen anybody analyze gathers to the extent that you do. So if I am making you think about the correlation of hands and handle, you have done the same for me about the importance of gathers. So when you do whatever extra analysis you're going to do, are you going to specifically get into the gathering aspect of it?
100%. Yeah, I've recorded a few of these already. Awesome. So like I talk a lot about the gathers and the ability to me, there's just like a real differentiation between your handle and your gathers after you pick up the ball, because your gathers are you literally ending your handle, right? And the way that you're able to extend and get all the way to the rim, the way that you are able to physically just deal with contact in ways, the way that you are, able to navigate bodies on the interior and map where they're coming from and see the second and third level of the court. And, that's something with AJ right now that I do worry about a little bit, honestly, is kind of him seeing the second and third level of defenders at times. Like there's a play against Australia that stands out in my brain because I'm obsessed with Jacob Furphy, like across the board. Right. So they run like an empty side ball screen and Furphy is guarding, I can't remember who, but he ends up being the lone defender on the weak side of the court after the ball screen. I think it was like a handoff into a delay screen or something for Dybansta to come up and get to the middle. And Furphy's the lone guy on the weak side. He comes over and tags Daniel Jacobson, who's rolling to the rim. And Dybansta is just like already decided, I'm throwing this pass to Jacobson. And then just throws it like immediately out of bounds, right? I don't know how much he's seeing that like 60 the second and third levels, defensively yet, which is fine. Like that stuff will improve.
You made the point earlier, which I think is worth kind of just reiterating. the level of coaching he's going to get this year in particular, in that system where it actually is space and pace, and you have to be able to make instinctive reads and keep the dominoes falling. I'm fascinated to see if he can play that way and how much of an adjustment that'll be. Not just in terms of like being an initiator, but also like being a secondary guy. If it's Rob Wright who comes off the ball screen and then AJ's got to make a quick next or something, how well does he do that? That's all that stuff is going to be very, very interesting to me.
Yeah. And, just to kind of follow up and close the loop on AJ real quick. I do think that this BYU team is really well, created for him to have a lot of success this year. Having Richie Saunders there, having Rob Wright there, it's going to make life just like so much easier for him, having those ball handlers there to where he can go be just like a slasher, right? Like there are going to be angles open all over the place in like a 5-out up-tempo scheme where he's going to be able to just be like that, typical patented, small forward and be able to attack and get downhill in a real way. Like I would expect he's going to average, somewhere between like 15 and 18 a game, like pretty easily this year, just because up-tempo scheme in a really good position for him to thrive. I think he's definitely going in the top. I would say he's going in the top 4, just in case somebody rises up, he's going to go in the top 4 of this draft. Like he's an awesome basketball player, has every chance to go number 1. But yeah, I am a fan while having some just like very minor questions. Like there were times where I watched the U19s and I was like, these are the same. I think he's a better prospect than Andrew Wiggins because of the flexibility things that we've talked about and the bend that we've talked about. Andrew never really quite had that. But the skill level stuff, I thought you could see some comparisons to Wiggins at times. And that's the stuff that you can improve. So I'm very hopeful that he's going to be able to improve those things, is what I would say. And if his floor is Andrew Wiggins, it's an amazing floor because that guy is, made an all-star game, right? Yes. And, has had a really great career and made $300 million or whatever. So if that's the floor, it's a great floor for AJ Dybansta, right?